The Hollywood epic science fiction masterpiece Dune Part 2 is truly breathtaking. The Chosen One, Paul Atreides, will join forces with the Freeman people, embarking on a path of confrontation against the conspirators bent on revenge, which leads to the destruction of his family. Faced with the choice between his lifelong love and the known destiny of the universe, he must strive to prevent the terrifying future that only he can foresee. The story continues from the grand finale of the first part, where the Harkonnen clan, without declaring war, decimates the entire Atreides family in a nocturnal operation. Masses of bodies are dragged to the square and set ablaze. The Emperor, sitting far away in the imperial capital, chooses silence regarding the matter. Although Duke Leto Atreides, like his son, is considered, for the sake of his own power, he must make sacrifices and acquiesce to the Harkonnens' dirty deeds on Arrakis. The Baron Harkonnen passes on his title to his nephew Rabban, and everyone uniformly salutes the new presumptive Baron. Meanwhile, Paul dreams of his unborn sister and confides in her about the recent series of events. Faced with an uncertain future, he is abruptly awakened by a gunshot, and Chani instructs him to remain silent as she directs the Fremen to flee towards a nearby hill. Stilgar advises Paul and his mother to stay put and let them handle the rest. Seeing the Harkonnen squad approaching from a distance, Paul quickly pulls his mother to hide beneath a rocky outcrop, facing the perilous desert. The Harkonnen are particularly alert, noticing footprints on the ground, as one of them picks up a weapon and moves towards where Paul and his mother are hiding. Rhythmic thumping sounds suddenly echo from afar. Realizing the Fremen are summoning the Sandworm, the Harkonnen immediately rush towards nearby rock formations, leaping up to higher ground. Positioned atop the rocks, they shatter the thumpers cautiously, scanning the surroundings for signs of the Fremen. Unbeknownst to them, this plays right into the Fremen's trap, as they intended to make the Harkonnen easy targets in plain sight. Snipers hidden in the distant dunes pick off the Harkonnen one by one, causing them to fall from the rocky heights. Startled by the falling bodies, Paul quickly recovers and engages in combat with the Harkonnen, the silent desert only broken by the clash of blades. With superior swordsmanship, Paul defeats his opponents, but as he turns, he finds a Harkonnen aiming a gun at him. In the nick of time, Lady Jessica intervenes, hurling a stone at the Harkonnen and saving Paul's life. Concerning the appearance of the Harkonnen squad deep in the desert, Paul suspects they might be after him. However, Stilgar believes they seek the Fremen's underground cities, aiming to exterminate all Fremen and gain complete control over the desert. Utilizing their still suits, the Fremen extract all the water from the bodies of the Harkonnen. Though undrinkable, it serves their cooling systems. After completing their tasks, the Fremen place a thumper on the ground, and as it begins its rhythmic thumping, the earth trembles violently. A colossal sandworm emerges from the depths, devouring the bodies of the Harkonnen, leaving no trace behind. By the way, if you enjoy our movie recaps, we're currently hosting a giveaway for our audience. We're excited to announce that a brand new scooter awaits one lucky subscriber. Don't miss out. Subscribe and follow us to stay tuned for more updates. The consecutive encounters have dealt heavy blows, leaving the presumptive Baron Rabban enraged. Blaming the harsh desert environment for all their troubles, his subordinates bear the brunt of his fury. This leads to Rabban losing control and violently smashing his head against the console. On the other side, under Stilgar's guidance, Paul finally encounters the hiding place of the Freemen, a massive underground city sheltering millions of Freemen. The arrival of the two outsiders sparks strong resentment among the Freemen, who demand immediate justice for Jameis's killer. Unintentionally, everyone seems to be brainwashed, chanting the name of the Messiah towards Paul. Clearly, this is the effect of the Bene Gesserit's clandestine manipulations over the years. Stilgar vouches for Paul with his life, affirming him as the prophesied savior. Consuming the spice, Paul glimpses a vision of the future where the Fremen kneel before the image of his father, indicating that his father is the true Messiah. At this moment, Stilgar emerges and summons Lady Jessica to witness the Fremen's method of handling their deceased. Using their still suits, the Fremen extract all the water from Jamis's body, storing it in water bags and pouring it into a pool within the underground city. Stilgar explains that even if they were dying of thirst, they would never drink a drop of this water, as each droplet contains the essence of their people's souls. Only the Messiah can lead them out of their suffering and restore the green paradise of Arrakis to its former glory. Lady Jessica is also shocked by the scene before her. She questions Stilgar about why he brought her to witness this. Stilgar explains that she is an important member of the Bene Gesserit, and with the Fremen's own Reverend Mother nearing death, he hopes she can become their new Reverend Mother. Seeing Stilgar's unwavering belief that Paul is the Messiah, Lady Jessica readily agrees to his proposal. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Lady Jessica enters the cave where the Reverend Mother resides. The Reverend Mother slowly opens her eyes and touches Lady Jessica's cheek, instructing her attendants to bring forth a vial of the water of life and offering it to her, saying that drinking it will free her mind, but will also cause her to bleed from every orifice and die a violent death. Hearing that the water of life poses a threat to her life, Lady Jessica resists. However, the Reverend Mother commands her to drink it using the power of voice. Reluctantly, Lady Jessica consumes the water of life, and as she finishes it, her body begins to tremble violently. The water of life takes effect, causing intense pain that Lady Jessica struggles to bear. After a fierce struggle, she faints from the pain. Paul paces back and forth outside, while Stilgar emerges to reassure him not to worry too much, as all they can do now is pray for Lady Jessica's safety. Lady Jessica, inheriting the memories of her ancestors, wakes up and becomes the new Reverend Mother of the Freemen. This time, Stilgar gains more authority and begins to fervently propagate that all prophecies have been fulfilled. Paul is indeed the prophesied Messiah. However, only Chani understands that it's all an illusion, preconceived by the Bene Gesserit, spreading false prophecies among them. The water of life poses no real threat, and Lady Jessica drinking it is not dangerous at all. Amidst the debate between the two factions, Paul intervenes, explaining that his mother had undergone special training in this regard and could neutralize any toxins in the water of life. He insists he is not the Messiah they speak of, but rather came to learn survival skills in the desert and seek revenge against those who killed his family. However, Stilgar interprets Paul's humility as excessive modesty, becoming more convinced than ever that Paul is indeed the prophesied savior. Lady Jessica suggests Paul drink the water of life to clear up any doubts, but Paul knows it's a scam and chooses silence in response to his mother's suggestion. In order to prove to everyone that Paul is the Messiah, Stilgar instructs him to venture alone into the depths of the desert, a move Chani knows will likely cost Paul his life. She decides to follow him, teaching him how to slide freely through the desert. In this way, she imparts the survival skills of the Fremen to Paul. As Paul gazes intently at Chani, the girl who has appeared countless times in his dreams, Chani notices his stare and shyly turns her head away. After undergoing the ritual of the water of life, Paul's sister joins their mother in discussing how they can make the Fremen believe in the prophecy. The sister suggests they start with the weaker-minded individuals among the Fremen. Observing the Fremen nearby, Lady Jessica also devises a plan. This is Paul's first attempt at riding the Sandworm, understanding that to learn the ways of survival, he must first master riding this colossal creature. With everyone anxiously watching, Paul resolutely climbs a small hill, grabs handfuls of sand, and pounds the ground to confirm its stability before planting the thumper. As the rhythmic thumping begins, a sandworm emerges from the distance, kicking up dust as it approaches. At this moment, everyone anxiously sweats for Paul, as no one has ever ridden such a massive sandworm, especially not someone with no prior experience like Paul. However, Paul shows no fear in the face of the colossal creature. He stands up and prepares himself to ride, but the sandworm passes by him. Determined, Paul dashes up the dune, knowing this is his only chance to prove himself. As he leaps onto the sandworm, the surrounding sands obscure the view. In his panic, Paul dons goggles and tightly grasps the hook line, knowing any misstep could be fatal. After numerous attempts, Paul finally manages to hook onto the sandworm's scales, feeling intense pain as it slows down. Seizing the opportunity, Paul attempts to stand up, and to the witness of everyone present, he successfully conquers the sandworm. With him navigating through the rolling sands atop the sandworm, if the sandworm is likened to a giant dragon, then Paul is akin to a brave medieval knight riding a dragon through the sands, traversing freely in the desert haze. Seeing Paul safe, Chani's lingering worries are finally laid to rest. That evening, everyone gathers together to celebrate Paul officially becoming a member of the Fremen. Paul expresses his commitment to work together with them to drive out all invaders from the planet Arrakis, ensuring that it will belong to them in the end. Upon hearing Paul's words, everyone reflects deeply. They've been in conflict with the Harkonnen for decades without much success. However, Paul assures them that his family has been fighting the Harkonnen for centuries, and he knows their habits and thought patterns well. As long as they believe in themselves, he is confident they will emerge victorious. Stilgar also expresses his need for a new name, and everyone agrees to bestow the name Usul upon Paul, signifying him as the pillar of the Fremen people. The Fremen hid under the sand, using their breathing tubes, waiting for the Harkonnen spice harvester to approach. As soon as the harvester neared, they burst out of the sand, catching them off guard. They were cut down by the Fremen. A winged aircraft hovered above, unleashing machine gun fire upon them. Paul led everyone to take cover under the harvester, while they swiftly crawled beneath it. Chani grabbed a rocket launcher, intending to target the aircraft, but a Harkonnen spotted them. Paul swiftly incapacitated the Harkonnen and loaded a missile into Chani's launcher. Turning around, he noticed two more Harkonnens approaching. He engaged in a fight with them, but one slipped past him and headed straight for Chani. Paul shouted her name, and Chani turned, blasting the Harkonnen away with a rocket. She ordered Paul to quickly reload for her. Just then, the winged aircraft arrived overhead. Chani fired a shot, but the aircraft's shield intercepted it. They realized that the shield only deactivated during firing. Paul dashed out to draw the aircraft's attention, prompting the pilot to deactivate the shield and unleash a barrage of gunfire at him. Paul exerted all his strength to leap into cover nearby. Only then did the winged aircraft realize that Chani had fired a missile at it, resulting in its destruction. Simultaneously, the Fremen lying in ambush also launched two missiles. With successive explosions echoing one after another, the Harkonnen spice harvester turned into dust. Soon, news of Paul's conquest of the Sandworm spread to Lady Jessica. Upon hearing that Paul rode a gigantic sandworm never before seen, Lady Jessica immediately ordered this news to be spread to every tribe. She wanted everyone to know that the prophecy had come true, that her son Paul was the chosen one. After spending some time together, Paul and Chani's relationship quickly grew warmer. They leaned on each other, sharing visions of a bright future, although the reality often fell short of their dreams. Soon Baron Harkonnen got wind of his army's consecutive attacks. He ordered Rabban to spare no expense in eradicating all the Fremen. In his sleep, Paul saw some hallucinations, envisioning a holy war happening somewhere in the south, where people lost their lives because of him. Chani comforted Paul, attributing the visions to his exposure to spice. By the way, if you enjoy our movie recaps, we're currently hosting a giveaway for our audience. We're excited to announce that a brand new scooter awaits one lucky subscriber. Don't miss out. Subscribe and follow us to stay tuned for more updates. To make more people aware of Paul's status as the chosen one, Lady Jessica decided to venture alone to the south, as the prophecy foretold the Savior's birth in the south. Paul, however, firmly declined his mother's invitation, knowing that going south would fulfill his dreams. But Lady Jessica was convinced that he would eventually go south. Watching his mother depart, Paul remembered that the figure in his dreams was her. Meanwhile, Rabban gathered all Harkonnen warriors to the depths of the desert. crazily firing missiles at the rock formations ahead. Raban had become obsessed, willing to do anything to prove himself to his uncle. Soon he paid a heavy price for his recklessness. The Fremen hidden in the thick fog caught Raban's men off guard, prompting Raban to order a swift retreat. Paul closely pursued, intent on killing them. Just as Raban, now on the aircraft, breathed a sigh of relief, he failed to notice a Fremen had followed him. They engaged in a fierce fight on the aircraft's landing gear, with Raban nearly falling off. At the brink of defeat, a timely intervention from a Harkonnen saved Raban's life. Meanwhile, the Emperor in the distant Empire received news of the Messiah's appearance. Princess Irulan hoped her father would adopt a wait-and-see approach to the matter. She then sought counsel from the Bene Gesserit sisterhood, discussing possible strategies. Inadvertently, Princess Irulan realized that Paul might be behind all of this. At the mention of Paul's name, the Bene Gesserit quickly suppressed her, fearing that if the other major houses learned of this, it could spark a war. Paul was never their sole hope from the start. The Baron's nephew, Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen, would become the new master of Arrakis. He kept a group of carnivorous beauties, casually killing people every day and feeding their livers to them. This was the day when Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen assumed the title of Baron. Under the watchful gaze of millions of Harkonnens, the Baron slowly floated out in his wheelchair. Reverend Mother Gaia's Helen Mohiam of the Bene Gesserit also appeared in the arena. As the gates of the arena slowly opened, Feyd-Rautha emerged from within. His guards released 3 opponents for him to duel. However, these opponents had been drugged beforehand, making it easy for him to defeat one effortlessly and swiftly slit the throat of the second. But with the third opponent, Feyd-Rautha realized he had not been drugged, evidently a move by the Baron to test his true abilities. Feyd-Rautha decisively removed his protective shield and engaged in a struggle with the formidable opponent. It became apparent that Feyd-Rautha was outmatched, and he would have been in dire straits if not for the intervention of his guards. Nonetheless, Feyd-Rautha managed to win the match through deceitful means. Expressing strong discontent towards his uncle's manipulation, Feyd-Rautha revealed that the Baron's motive was to gain more support for him. He went from being a mere playboy earlier that morning to becoming a hero in the hearts of the Harkonnen people. The Baron announced his intention to hand over all spice mining operations to Feyd-Rautha, assuring him that if he performed well, he would ensure Feyd-Rautha ascended to the throne as emperor in the future. In the evening, Feyd-Rautha encountered Reverend Mother Mohiam in the corridor. She came on behalf of the Bene Gesserit to discuss the breeding program with him. Everyone paid their respects to the new Baron. Raban, discontented with Feyd-Rautha usurping his title, intended to confront him. However, Feyd-Rautha swiftly kicked him to the ground, forcing Raban to kiss his feet in submission. Feyd-Rautha rallied all the Harkonnen troops, fully prepared to head towards the Fremen's habitat. Unaware of this, Paul and his group lay in ambush in the desert, awaiting the arrival of the spice mining vehicles. When one of the vehicles passed by, the Fremen rose from the sands, engaging the guards on the vehicle in combat. The vehicle met its demise amidst the gunfire. A guard drew his sword, intending to take on the Fremen, but Paul quickly subdued him. Upon closer inspection, Paul realized it was his mentor, Gurney. Gurney had survived the massacre from that night and, feeling hopeless after seeing his 2 masters harmed, had turned to smuggling. Learning that Paul's group consisted of only 200 people surprised Gurney greatly. Duncan had previously indicated that the Freemen numbered in the millions. If they all obeyed Paul's commands, he could avenge his family. However, Paul didn't want to use their admiration to rule over the Fremen. He knew that if he went south, billions of bodies would litter the galaxy's planets, all because of him. Chani expressed unease about Gurney's arrival, fearing he might lead Paul down a dangerous path. Gurney told Paul that if he didn't want to go south, he would reveal his father's atomic bomb base to him instead. Back in their tent, Paul assured Chani that he wouldn't use his power to win this war. The next day, under Gurney's guidance, Paul arrived at his father's armory. Utilizing his Atreides genetics, he opened the doors, revealing tens of thousands of atomic bombs. Meanwhile, Lady Jessica had also arrived in the south. she instructed the person in charge of harvesting the water of life to prepare a vial and await her son's arrival. As the sandworm was placed into the pool, a blue liquid flowed from its body, the so-called water of life. In his dreams, Paul witnessed a future scene where Chani was horribly burned by a fire. Frantically calling out Chani's name as he ran out of the tent, he saw Chani standing on the dunes, witnessing the Harkonnens ruthlessly bombing the underground city. After the battle, the Fremen suffered heavy losses, with tens of thousands left homeless. News arrived from the south, calling for all tribal leaders to gather for a meeting, including the chosen one, Paul. Paul knew he couldn't evade this time. Whether he liked it or not, he had to face the harsh reality. If he didn't go south, the Fremen would perish, but if he did, his mother would wage war in his name. Faced with this dilemma, Paul crouched down, attempting to seek guidance from the spirit of Jameis. In his dreams, Jameis, who had always been his mentor, instructed him to drink the water of life to open his mind. Only then could he save the one he loved. Under Stilgar's guidance, Paul mounted a sandworm and headed south. As Paul drank the water of life, his sister's voice appeared in his ears, and everything became clear to him. Paul underwent a complete transformation, feeling he had seen through everything. He wouldn't allow anyone to question his actions anymore. When he ordered the besieging and massacre of the Sardaukar Legion, he ultimately became the monster he had always feared. However, Paul also fell victim to the poison of the water of life. Only the tears from Chani, the desert spring, could save his life. Chani knew this was all part of the prophecy, but she still resolutely fed Paul the tears. She loved the real Paul. However, when Paul woke up, Chani's emotions were mixed, then immediately slapped him hard across the face. Chani was incredibly angry and disappointed because she learned that Paul had known Chani would come to save him. In that moment, Paul lost Chani forever because he was no longer the sincere person he once was. The reborn Paul gained greater abilities, understanding the past and present, and bridging time and space. With this, he foresaw the only way to defeat the Emperor. He told everyone that they had lost in countless possible futures, but there was one method that might barely lead them to victory: issuing a challenge to the Emperor, deceiving him into coming, and then using political means to remove him from the throne. The Emperor, upon receiving the challenge, chose to meet Paul. He knew that if the Harkonnens allied with Paul, he would lose all his power. This meeting was not only for a direct confrontation with Paul, but also to subtly dissuade the Harkonnens from having ulterior motives. Eventually, Paul put on the ring, symbolizing power. All the Fremen were swayed by the prophecy and followed him. Lady Jessica found Chani, hoping she would also follow Paul, but Chani had already seen through the manipulative tactics of the Bene Gesserit, which used prophecies to control the minds of the Fremen. She remembered that her purpose was for the freedom and rights of her own people, not for Paul's revenge, which would only lead to an imperial war and countless deaths. Seeing the Emperor arrive on Arrakis, the Baron also sensed trouble and quickly informed the other major houses to prevent any mishaps. Meanwhile, from a distance, Paul observed the Harkonnen base and assigned tasks to everyone. He also noticed Chani distancing herself from him, but with the imminent war, he had no choice but to remain silent. The Emperor inquired of the Baron if he was aware of the Fremen's Messiah, but the Baron dismissed them entirely. Seeing the Baron's lack of understanding of the current situation on Arrakis, the Emperor ordered the Sardaukar soldiers behind him to execute him. Paul evenly distributed the sand thumpers on various small hills. With his command, Gurney launched atomic bombs toward the Harkonnen forces, burying the base under a massive mushroom cloud. The Sardaukar soldiers waiting outside fled in panic, and the entire base trembled violently. The Emperor never expected Paul to choose such a method of warfare. As the smoke cleared, the Sardaukar soldiers raised their flags and resumed their defensive formation. However, as nightmare-like sandworms emerged from the smoke, the Sardaukar soldiers were terrified and fled towards the base. But the Fremen, riding sandworms, didn't give them a chance. Controlling the sandworms, they surrounded the soldiers, while the ornithopters were too late to stop them. Millions of freemen emerged from the sand and clashed with the approaching Sardaukar soldiers. The freemen, enhanced by prolonged exposure to spice, easily overwhelmed the Sardaukar, who were considered the strongest in the universe and had the geographical advantage. But under the assault of so many freemen, they couldn't withstand it. In an instant, corpses littered the ground, and blood flowed like rivers. Inside the base, the people trembled with fear, and the Sardaukar soldiers lined up to march towards the gate, only to be met with silence. In the smoke, Paul walked in with a golden tooth knife, passing through everyone until he reached the Baron. After exchanging greetings with his grandfather, he plunged the knife into the Baron's neck. Thus, the Baron breathed his last breath in front of everyone. Finally, Paul avenged his father with his own hands. He ordered the Fremen to massacre all the Sardaukar soldiers, making himself a monster. After a day and a night of battle, there were few troops left in the Harkonnen army. Gurney fought with all his might, seeking revenge for his family, and stabbed Rabban in the neck. The Fremen piled up the bodies of the Harkonnen soldiers in the square and set them ablaze. After the war ended, various major families arrived at the planet Eridus one after another. Paul ordered Gurney to bring the Emperor to him and then face the various families. Those who dared to attack him, Paul threatened to destroy all the spice, sending the entire empire back to the primitive age. When Lady Helen tried to speak up, Paul directly rebuked her. Paul used the Emperor's murder of his family as leverage, demanding his abdication. Princess Irulan saw through Paul's plan and agreed to ally with him, on the condition that he must spare her father. Faced with such a competitor as Paul, the Emperor could only surrender. The Emperor killed his father because of Paul's father's weakness, and Paul was much stronger than his father. When Chani heard that her beloved was going to marry Princess Irulan, she couldn't understand how that lover had become so terrifyingly cunning. The Fremen fought passionately for their freedom, but in the end, a new emperor and empress emerged from among them, ushering in a greater and more covert form of enslavement. Rosa, representing the emperor, engaged in a duel with Paul. Paul drew his Kreis knife, and the two cousins wrestled with each other. However, Rosa quickly began to use cheating methods, knocking Paul down. Seeing Rosa constantly mocking himself in front of Chani, Paul got up again and wrestled with him. Rosa stabbed Paul in the chest, but then lowered his head to see that Paul had already stabbed himself in the abdomen. Paul successfully defeated the Emperor's champion, and everyone began to kneel and worship the new monarch. Only Chani firmly refused to kneel and submit to him. Accompanied by many freemen, they boarded a spaceship and headed for the Milky Way. Thus began an inevitable holy war. At the end of the story, Chani left Paul and walked alone into the desert, taking out the Kreis knife to summon the Sandworms back to her homeland. In the silent desert, there was only Chani's lonely figure. She would ride the Sandworm and continue to walk through her own dunes.